Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Yes, indeed. This is Jerry Hickey for Invite Health, and today I'd like to discuss green tea for your memory because a lot of data is coming out on this. So over the last 3 decades, green tea has been studied for its beneficial effects, including its neuroprotective effects, meaning it helps protect the tissues and the cells in your brain. Now, in addition to the effects of green tea on brain health, there's a lot of data coming out on the effects of green tea to support bone health, retaining muscle not just in athletes but in aging people, breast health, prostate health, longevity, and reducing the risk of developing age-related frailty, all of which have a good deal of evidence. Now, green tea is very good for the brain. So let's discuss a little bit how memories are formed in the brain, a little bit technical, but we'll get through it quickly. In the brain, memories are started in the form of strengthened connections between your nerve cells called neurons. Now, this takes place in the cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain, and that processes information brought in by your senses, and it starts to lay down the functions, the start of memories. So these neurons that are laying down the memories are reactivated later when you remember something. Now, there's a second part of the brain that's important with this. It's called the hippocampus, and it binds together the separate sensory information coming in from your eyes and ears, etc., to form single memories, to form that whole thing of a memory. So memories strengthen the connection between these neurons, and these neurons work together. Now, the messages travel from one neuron to the next through projections in a space between these cells called a synapse. So in other words, the neurons, the nerve cells in your brain that do all the remembering and learning, they're not directly connected with one another. There has to be a microscopic space in between them. Otherwise, that first thought that you ever had would still be circulating through your brain, so there has to be a stopgap for that. Now, what transmits the messages between these cells are little brain chemicals called neurotransmitters, and we know about 100 of these, and one very important for your memories is called acetylcholine. Just a little bit of info right there, a little bit of extra info. So a recent breakthrough study by Japanese researchers published in the International Journal of Molecular Science shows that the EGCG in green tea induces neuritogenesis. Now, this is really important. Green tea has a lot of natural components in it, and they seem to work better when they're all together. But the most important one is turning out to be EGCG. There's other important components like L-theanine. But neuritogenesis is really important, and showing that green tea can accomplish this is a great finding. Neuritogenesis is repairing the communication projections of these brain cells. Now, this is very important because these projections become frayed with age, and this affects the ability of the cells to transmit messages. In this case, we're talking about learning and remembering. We're talking about your memory. So this can help prevent age-related brain dysfunction and memory loss. It also improves the formation of memory cells. So it's not just repairing the gap in between the cells, it's actually creating new cells. This is a study from China, actually, Chinese researchers. The team focused on EGCG from green tea. Let me open my page. Here's what they found. EGCG boosts the production of neural progenitor cells. Now, what does that mean? I mean, simply put, these are like stem cells in the brain, and they can adapt and differentiate into different types of cells. In this case, we're talking about memory cells. Let me tell you something. 10 years ago, nobody thought this could happen. About 8 or 9 years ago, they really discovered that we release something generally when we go into deep sleep. It's called a delta wave sleep or non-REM sleep. It's when you're not dreaming. It's when you're really deep into sleep. You release something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And this stuff is kind of like miracle grow for the brain. That was actually a term coined by a Harvard neurological researcher. And what this means is that green tea somehow is establishing the ability of the brain to create new memory cells at night, something that starts to decline with age. So this is a good finding. So let's talk a little bit about tea. Let's have a word about tea. There's white tea, there's black tea, there's oolong tea, and there's green tea. They all come from the same plant. It's called Camellia sinensis. White tea, they pick the buds really early in the spring. I mean, there might still be ice on the ground, and there's no general color. It's kind of like a very light amber. White tea is loaded with some really nice polyphenol antioxidants, a little bit of a different profile than green tea. So when the buds are transforming into leaves, they can pick the leaves, and what they do is steam them. And when they steam the leaf, they inhibit an enzyme that would otherwise ferment the ingredients in the tea leaf. So it prevents the fermentation of the leaf, and it stays as green tea. Now, if they don't steam the leaf and they let it progress about halfway, it becomes oolong tea. So it's kind of the halfway mark between green tea and black tea. And if they let it ferment all the way, it becomes black tea, which is completely different ingredients. They're called tannins at that point. They're very dark. They're good for the heart. Not a lot of research on them being great for cancer or being great for the brain, but they certainly are good for the heart. Now, the ingredients in green tea that support brain health are varied and many, with the most evidence on the following. Methylxanthines. Now, methylxanthines, in this case, resemble caffeine. So there's a little bit of caffeine, but not enough to make you nervous. It's mostly methylxanthines called theophylline and theobromine with a small amount of caffeine. And these wake up your brain without causing nervousness, and they improve your focus, your ability to pay attention. Then there's an amino acid. Now, most amino acids join together to create proteins and other things. This one stays on its own. It's called L-theanine. And it's very soothing. It's a great stress buster. It's like a moment of zen, and it's probably why people who do deep meditation get a little bit of an assist from drinking a cup of tea. Not only do you get the methylxanthines that improve your wakefulness, but you get the theanine, which supports creativity and your attention span, and it just blocks that whole stress thing from going on. And then there's the catechins, and there's a wide array of these. There's about 20 that I know of, the important one being EGCG. And once again, they have a synergism. They work better together. So let's discuss some of the studies, because we're really focusing on these catechins in this case. Catechins are types of flavonoids. Flavonoids are great antioxidants, anti-inflammatory agents, and they're found in diverse foods. I mean, they're found in oranges, and they're found in apples, and they're found in cocoa, and they're found in garlic and onions and broccoli. There's a lot of them. This time we're talking about the catechins in green tea, a very nice profile of catechins. So let's discuss the effects of green tea on the brain. This first study is looking at kind of what green tea is actually doing in the brain. So we're not looking at the results yet in this study. It's in the journal Psychopharmacology. It's from the Department of Psychiatry, University of Basel. University of Basel is in Basel, Switzerland. And it's in healthy adults. Green tea improved connectivity between regions of the brain that are important for cognitive function. And this improved the ability of the young people to perform cognitive tasks. It actually had an effect on their working memory. Working memory is memory involved with your current tasks, like keeping your eye on the ball. So they looked at healthy young men, and they had a soft drink that contained several grams of green tea extract before they solved working memory tasks. They analyzed how this affected the brain. They used MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, functional MRIs, and the MRIs showed increased connectivity between the parts of the brain involved with like problem solving and communication and memory skills, the parietal and the frontal cortex of the brain. But these findings, the connectivity, the improvement in connectivity between these parts of the brain correlated very strongly with improvements in doing the task and performing the task. So here's what the researchers said. Our findings suggest that green tea might increase the short-term synaptic plasticity of the brain. This is really important, especially for aging people. Plasticity is the ability of the brain to adapt to things and create new neural networks and connectivity so that you can learn, so you can remember, so you can solve problems. So here's the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging. It's the School of Public Health, Indiana University, which is in Bloomington, Indiana, and they're looking at the effects of green tea on working memory in healthy women. So the study was looking at the effects of green tea on working memory in young women between the age of 21 to 30 and in older women between 50 and 63. And it was green tea versus placebo. So they found that the green tea really helped these women pay attention and perform mentally, such as in reading skills. Now, in the older women. In other words, the test results show that, and by the way, this was green tea lacking caffeine. It was high in the EGCG that we were talking about, the catechin, but it lacked the caffeine. So it wasn't the caffeine that was doing it. In other words, the test results show that basically decaffeinated green tea enhanced working memory in women between the age of like 50 to 65. Now this is important because this is a systematic review and meta-analysis. It's from the University of Basel Department of Psychiatry over in Switzerland and King's College London, their Institute of Psychiatry over there in England. It's in the journal Phytomedicine. A systematic review means that they went through these electronic databases on the internet, like PubMed and Embase, etc. And then they take the studies and they whittle it down to the studies looking at specifically what they're trying to figure out, like in this case, green tea and memory and mood. And they put together the studies that they deemed to be very responsible, well-performed, honestly reported, high-quality studies. So if you do a meta-analysis correctly, it shows you that something either works or it doesn't work. So they looked at 21 studies, and they said, hey, the study quality was good here. These are good studies. They're non-biased. Green tea in 21 studies had the following effects. Okay? It improved psychopathological symptoms. Now, that could be anxiety and stress. It improved cognition. In other words, it benefited paying attention, focus, attention span, focus, memory, and brain functions, like working memory, seen on functional MRIs. So, in other words, a review of high-quality research by professionals in their field, published in a high-quality journal, shows that green tea really does work for our brain. So here's a study. It's researchers in Japan. And they're looking at a green tea extract, and they found that it boosted a range of cognitive functions, with particular benefits for memory, short-term memory. It improved the many mental state exam. Now, this is important because it was in elderly nursing home residents with cognitive dysfunction. It's in the journal Nutrients, a very good journal. The mini mental state exam is given to people to judge to see if they have any level of dementia and how badly they're doing and how well the medication and treatment is doing, etc. So improving the mini mental state exam in these very elderly nursing home residents is a very positive thing. And once again, it goes back to improving short-term memory, focus, attention span, but also reseeding the brain with new memory cells. That's important. It's called cognitive reserve. There was this great study, it was like in the 1980s. It was the nun study. It took place down south, southern U.S. And they took a group of elderly nuns who donated their brains to science. And they found that a number of the nuns actually had Alzheimer's damage in their brain. They should not have been able to function, yet they went on functioning. Why? Because they developed cognitive reserve. They developed new, healthy, young memory cells that were not tainted by the brush of Alzheimer's type damage. And they did this by keeping busy, by being socially active with the other nuns, by doing volunteer work, by working in the garden, by communicating. It's real. Cognitive reserve is a very important concept. As we grow older, we release less brain-derived neurotrophic factor, so we create fewer new memory cells. Young people create many. They develop 600, 700, 800 each night. So by the time they're 50, they've already replaced all of their initial memory cells. They've replaced them with new memory cells. The problem is in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, that slows down because you release less brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So if there are ways that you can establish and restore some level of release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor that's better than your typical for your age group, you create more new memory cells. They're baby memory cells, basically. They haven't been damaged by mood disturbances like depression. They haven't been damaged by the kind of plaque you get with Alzheimer's dementia. And these still go on functioning even though the rest of the brain has kind of slowed down and been hurt a little bit. So, by the way, other things help you with brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Exercise does to a degree. Eating a lot of nice green leafy vegetables and legumes and things like avocados and extra virgin olive oil and your salad and nice fresh fruits like blueberries and blackberries. Those things are helpful. Curcumin, a well-absorbed curcumin that can get into your brain is very helpful. Check out our webcast on that, our podcast on that, I should say. So here's a study from Korean researchers. So as you can see, these studies are coming in from all over the world. They're coming in from the United States, from Canada, from Great Britain, from Ireland, from Italy. They're coming in from Switzerland and Germany. They're coming in from Japan and Korea. They're coming in from all over the world. So these are Korean researchers who published their findings in a Journal of Medicinal Foods. If an older person took a green tea supplement every day, a green tea extract, it boosts their mental alertness and it enhances their memory. Now, this was in 91 elderly people with mild cognitive impairment. It was over a 16-week period. They took electroencephalograms of 24 of these subjects, and it showed powerful proof right there that doing the green tea improved the function of the brain, the activity in their brain, and key regions of the brain involved with memory. Now, this is a very important finding. These are 91 elderly Korean subjects with mild cognitive impairment, and this is over a 4-month period. Mild cognitive impairment, the brain has shrunk, and you're kind of like not doing well with your memory. So if you buy a new car, you went out, you bought a new Subaru, you can't really understand how to use the GPS in there to get home or to get anywhere. You get a new cell phone, you can't really understand how to do all the functions in your new cell phone. You have your high definition TV and you want to download Amazon Prime, and you know what, that could drive anybody crazy, but especially if you have mild cognitive impairment, because it's hard for these people to understand complex instructions. The problem is they could still function in society, but that's really a portal into Alzheimer's disease. About 80% of the people who develop mild cognitive impairment, which you can really see that they're lacking in memory, but they're still getting along in society, 80% of them will drift into Alzheimer's disease. And up to 25% of people over the age of 60 develop mild cognitive impairment. So they found in people with mild cognitive impairment that green tea really did have a good impact on their brain function. Now, there's other studies on green tea calming down the brain, helping focus, maybe even helping protect the brain from the kind of plaque that builds up in the brain with aging that can really cause havoc in the brain and damage the neurons in the brain. Green tea is worth it. If you're going to drink green tea, you want to get organic green tea, because green tea is grown in areas of the world where there's malaria and a lot of mosquitoes that can transmit the malaria. So they spray green tea commonly with powerful insecticides like DDT, and DDT builds up in your body. It has a 50-year half-life, meaning if you brought in DDT today, half of it would still be in your body 50 years from now. So if you're drinking green tea with spray on it today, tomorrow, the next day, that DDT is building up in you. You don't want that DDT in your body, especially near a woman's breasts. Not a good idea. So get an organic green tea, and add some lemon to it. Don't add milk. Milk seems to bind up the good ingredients in green tea, where lemon kind of protects them from your digestive juices. Your digestive juices can damage the very important ingredients in green tea that are good for the brain, like the EGCG. So your stomach acids, your intestinal enzymes can damage it. Lemon shields it. You absorb more of them intact. Good way to go. Before I go any further, if you have any questions about this or anything else I say in a podcast, or just a question in general, let me give you 2 email addresses. I'll give you mine, J. Hickey. My name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a pharmacist nutritionist. jhickey@invitehealth.com. Or I set up a website with 5 of my nutritionists on it, nutrition@invitehealth.com. So, you get a quick response, 5 different nutritionists. It goes to one of them, bang, you get an answer. Nutrition@invitehealth.com. So thank you for tuning into the Invite Health podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or you could just visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe. Please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @Invite Health. I hope to see you next time on another episode of the Invite Health podcast, and thank you so much for listening.